And worse yet, the woman who wants to have the third Obama term. Secretary Clinton said at the debate a week or so ago in New Hampshire that we're right exactly where we want to be regarding ISIS. Like, imagine that. I mean, I've taken down to calling her Secretary Happy Talk, because that's what she is. People are dead in Paris. People are dead in San Bernardino. Threats everywhere. And Secretary Clinton says we're right exactly where we need to be on ISIS. Because what she wants to do is happy talk you on her way to the presidency. She wants to tell you that everything is just okay. No problems in Syria, no problems in Iraq, that they don't have totally under control. And I don't believe we felt this threatened since immediately after September 11th. And here's the difference between me and the other people in this race. I'm the only person in this race that's actually done this. I spent 7 years as U.S. Attorney in New Jersey. I was named U.S. Attorney by the President on September 10th, 2001. And the next day, the job that I accepted the day before became entirely different, especially as one of those airplanes left an airport in my state, and that more people died on September 11th from New Jersey than any place in America other than the state of New York. So this is not theoretical for me. I spent the next 7 years bringing terrorism cases, investigating terrorism cases, prosecuting terrorists, and putting them in jail. When I spend my first day in the Oval Office, and the FBI director and the CIA director come in to give me my briefing, the FBI director won't have to introduce himself to me because we worked together. He was the U.S. Attorney in Manhattan when I was the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey, right after September 11th. He won't have to tell me what actionable intelligence is because I've already seen it. He won't have to tell me what strategies we should pursue to try to stop these folks because I've already engaged in them. And he'll never have to wonder whether I have the backs of his men and women who are out there doing this dirty, dangerous job for us, because he knows I supported them in the past as U.S. Attorney, and I'll support them even more as President. We don't need a president again who needs on-the-job training in the Oval Office. For the last 7 years, we had a president who had to learn as he went along, because the largest thing he had ever run in his life was 30, 40 people on his Senate staff. Nothing bigger, nothing more complicated. And then we put him in charge of the most complex, most difficult government in the world. And we wonder why things like the VA don't work anymore. We wonder why Obamacare is a disaster. We wonder why he can't keep us safe. We wonder why he can't protect us from cyber attacks from China. We wonder why, because he's never run anything in his life. He's a United States Senator. By definition, they do nothing. They go to Washington and they vote. They're one of 100. Lots of good men and women there, but not responsible for anything. Have you ever noticed that? Whenever you ask a United States Senator if there's something you don't like that happened in Washington, and you ask them about it, they say, well, you know, I voted against that in the subcommittee, or I had an amendment in the committee that would have changed what it is you don't like. My amendment didn't pass, but I had an amendment on that. Or I voted yes in the committee before I voted no on the full floor of the Senate because the bill was changed. And by the time you're done listening, there's two things you know. One, you don't begin to understand what they're talking about because they speak in a foreign language. We need like a Washington to normal people dictionary, right, that converts the words they use into words that we as regular Americans can understand. And second, what you know is that they don't want to be held responsible for anything. You saw this in the last debate, right? Senator Rubio, Senator Cruz, and Senator Paul all arguing with each other over the same piece of legislation, all arguing over how they voted. Shouldn't that be a pretty easy thing to figure out? There's only two choices, right? If you were there, there's only two choices, yes or no. But you saw the three of them arguing, and that's why eventually someone asked me a question. I think it was Dana Bash asked me a question. I said, well, are all of your eyes glazing over like mine are, this is what it's like to be on the floor of the United States Senate. That's where Barack Obama came from. That's where Hillary Clinton came from. Do we really want to go back to that again? On either side of the aisle. We need people who have actually run something, who have actually done something and been held accountable for the decisions that you make. When I make decisions in New Jersey, I can't say, well, you know, I had an amendment to the bill in the subcommittee. Like, it's either I did it or I didn't. I signed it or I vetoed it. I implemented it or I didn't. You don't have excuses. And I have 60,000 people working for me every day. I've always said it's the most frightening thing about being governor of New Jersey. I have 60,000 people who have letterhead with my name on it. I don't always know what they're doing. But what I know is I'll always be accountable for what they do. There's no one else to blame. You have to be accountable. We need somebody in the Oval Office again who understands that. Who the first day won't sit in that chair and spin around and go, gee whiz, isn't it great to be president? But when you sit in that chair, understands, because they've sat in a chair like it before, that this is important. And that the decisions that come to your desk when you're the executive in a large government always stink. All the good decisions are made below you. The easy ones are made by other people. And then they come to you and say, by the way, we made this decision for you, Governor, and it's worked out great. And you can go out and take a bow for it. The ones that come to your desk, only two kinds. They're the ones when they walk in, you can smell them as they come in. Because they've been sitting somewhere, getting uglier and uglier as everyone was looking at it going, ooh, I don't know what to do about that, and it's not good, we don't want to bring it into him. Right? But then eventually they said, well, okay, we got to bring it into him. And you can smell it on the way in the door. You know, there's nothing but bad choices, but you have to make a choice. You can't refer it to the subcommittee. You got to make a decision. The second types are the ones that they all know they can't make. They're above their pay grade. That only the person elected, the executive, can make that decision. And those are always hard. But you make them. And you make them every day. And the reason you make them every day is because that's what you were elected to do. You were elected to make decisions, not give speeches, but to make decisions. And we need a president who's unafraid, once again, to make decisions. And who has the background and the experience to be able to make those decisions in a way that are going to actually move our country forward. Last thing I'll tell you is this, I take your questions. Washington is an incredibly crazy place, right? I mean, we just see some of the stuff that goes on there and you just shake your head, right? So like you had Senator Rubio, who's in town, and you'll probably see him around here somewhere in the next day or two, and he said a week or so ago that he was completely opposed to the new spending bill in Congress. Absolutely opposed, it's awful, it's terrible. So I'm like, this is great, okay, Marco's opposed to this, that's good. So I can't wait to turn on C-SPAN 2, because he gives a good speech, Marco, and I want to hear his stirring speech that's going to try to persuade people on the floor of the Senate not to vote for this awful spending bill. Except he never showed up. He was totally opposed to it and didn't go there to vote no. Like, then what's it matter that you're opposed to it? He matters as much as I do. I don't have a vote in the Senate. He has one, just didn't go. Only in Washington could you have the guts to stand up and say, I'm against something that you have a vote to vote no on, and then just not go. And then put out a press release after it gets passed and say, this is why I was opposed to it. Well, dude, show up to work and vote no, right? Just show up to work and vote no. Like, and if you don't want to, then quit. Like, it's okay, he's running for president. I'm not saying he has to be there every day. I know he's running for president. That's fine, just tell us that. I'm running for president, so I'm not going. But on a day this important, when he said it was important, not me, he said it was important. And then you have Senator Cruz who says, I'm going to carpet bomb ISIS in Syria so much that we're going to see if sand can glow. All right, that's tough. Like, I'm from New Jersey, and that sounds tough to me, right? That's tough. Man, sand glowing, that's tough talk, right? So, okay, you say to yourself, all right, well, maybe this is the guy we need, because he's tough. Except, this past summer, we had an opportunity to give our intelligence community all the tools they needed to connect the dots and keep us safe, he took tools away from them. He took tools away from the NSA that would help keep us safe. So, does it matter what you say or what you do? So this is the problem. And this is what I want you to think about when you go to caucus on February 1st. Are you going to vote for someone who says something, or are you going to vote for someone who does something? We've had 7 years of beautiful talk from a teleprompter. And when you listen to it, oftentimes it'll just make your heart sing. Sounds great. Except nothing happens after it. We don't need that again. We need people who actually know how to do something. Doesn't mean you'll always agree with everything I do. You won't. I guarantee you. In fact, if you're looking for the candidate that you agree with 100% of the time, my suggestion to you, go home after this meeting and look in the mirror. You're it. You're the only person you agree with 100% of the time. And so if you're looking for that candidate, I'm not it, but guess what? Neither are the other 12. They're not it either. So you're not always going to agree with everything I do, but let me guarantee you one thing. You'll never have to worry about me doing what I say I'm going to do. Because as U.S. Attorney and as governor for the last 13 years, all I've had to do is make decisions and implement them. That's been my job. And I've done it for 13 years. Not perfectly. Not every decision was right. But man, I'm sure there's lots of people in this room who've made some decisions they wish they could take back too. That means we're human. But what will happen with me when I'm sitting there is I'll make those decisions, and if they turn out to be wrong, I'll fix them. And if they turn out to be right, then we'll never have to worry about them again. But I won't sit there and wring my hands and worry about my poll numbers. Because I'll tell you something, in 6 years as governor of New Jersey, my poll numbers have been everywhere from in the 30s to in the 70s, and everywhere in between. And you know why? Because I do things. When you do things, you get people angry sometimes. And then when they work, they go, all right. And then your numbers go back up. And when those numbers go back up, you know what you do? Do something again that's hard. And then your numbers go back down again. And then when the hard thing works out, they go back up. It's a roller coaster. That's what public life is if you make decisions. But if you do nothing, you can keep those numbers right up there. Because everyone goes, not doing anything. I guess it's okay. Not offending me. We want a president who is willing to offend again. We want a president who's willing to make the hard decisions we need, and we need a president who understands how to protect us. Because this world's getting more dangerous and more difficult. So I'm going to stop there, because I'd rather spend the rest of the time answering your questions. There's only one rule in my town hall meetings. You raise your hand, I call on you. This is not like some other town hall meetings that I hear about in Iowa, where you have to write down your questions on the way in. You may have gone to some of those. And you write them down, then the staff looks at them, and then they decide which ones that I like to answer the best, and they give me those, and we pretend that's a town hall meeting. It would be wrong of me, by the way, to say who does that. Be indiscreet of me to do that, but her initials are Hillary Rodham Clinton. So you just raise your hand, I call on you. Yes, sir. What do you got? We don't need a mic, I think. It's a small enough room. Go ahead. Yes, sir.
Do you address taxes and job creation?
Yes, sir. First off, if one of these nights, as it starts to get a little colder here, and when we're all having our bodies adjust to the cold, sometimes, at least for me, like when it first starts to get cold, I have trouble falling asleep at night. If you do, go to my website, chrischristie.com, and all these things are laid out in real detail on there. You'll get the gist of it and then go right off to sleep. It's perfect. It's a twofer. But I'll talk to you about taxes and job creation. First thing, the tax system in this country, if all of you in this room, or at least some of you, feel as if the tax system in this country is rigged for the rich, the reason you feel that way is because it is. It's rigged for the rich, and the reason that it is because they're the ones with the lobbyists and the lawyers and the accountants who can go down there and make the pitch to Congress to get little special things. Here's what I say about the tax system on the individual side. Stop all of the gimmicks. Get rid of every deduction and every special interest loophole except for two: the home mortgage interest deduction and the charitable contribution deduction. Those are the ones that real people use. And we want to continue to encourage that. We want to continue to encourage people to own their homes, and we want to continue to encourage people to donate to local charities or national charities, whatever is in their heart. Other than that, if we got rid of all the rest of them, we could lower our rates down to 28% on the top end, which is where it was when Reagan did tax reform in the mid-1980s, and 8% on the low end. Just have 3 brackets, 8, 1 in the middle, and 28, and I negotiate the one in the middle with the Congress. And then you could do your taxes in 15 minutes. Here's how much you made, take away your mortgage interest, take away your charitable contributions, multiply it times the bracket, send your check, and be done. 15 minutes. And here's the other thing. This is just a side nice benefit. We could fire a lot of IRS agents. We just wouldn't need them anymore, right? Because it would be a very simple way to figure out what you've done and what you haven't. That's going to help create jobs in this country. It's going to put more money in the pockets of the people who spend money and who invest money in this country to create jobs. Right now, the problem is we have GDP growth at like 1.5%. Well, that's just keeping us bobbing along. It's like floating along in the water. We're not doing anything. We need to get more money into the system, and not by printing more money, but by actually having people have more money in their hands that they've earned and can spend and invest in the way they see fit, not the way the government sees fit. And we need to do the same thing on the corporate side. You know, we're one of the few countries in the world that double taxes our corporations. So you've seen what Mrs. Clinton calls corporate inversions. Big one just happened. Allergan, an Irish pharmaceutical company, merged with Pfizer, so that Pfizer can now have an Irish headquarters, so they don't have to pay American taxes anymore. That's killing this country. And it's because we double tax, because if they make money in England or in Spain or in France or in Germany, they pay taxes there. And then we're one of the only countries, along with North Korea, that taxes them again when they come back here, and at the highest tax rate in the world for companies, 35%. Well, listen, these folks didn't get rich and start big companies because they're stupid. So you know what they do? They never bring the money home. They keep it overseas. It doesn't get invested in creating American jobs. So I say we need to lower that rate to 25%. We need to stop the double taxation. Get rid of their special interest loopholes as well, but get them a lower rate and tell them we're not going to double tax them anymore. There's no reason for us to be double taxing these companies and then having them bring their money home. And what I'd say for the $2 trillion or so that they already have overseas, I'll give them a one-time chance to bring the money back in and tax them at 8.75%. Because 35% is zero. 8.75% of $2 trillion is a lot. And what I would use that money for is infrastructure in this country. We need to rebuild our roads, our bridges, and our mass transit systems. And I don't want us to raise taxes. We don't have to. If we do this, we can use that money to help to rebuild our roads and our bridges, our tunnels, our mass transit systems across the country. That'll help to create jobs as well and create a more welcoming infrastructure for businesses to grow and expand in the country. So that's what I would do in brief on that. There's more detail on the sleep-inducing website, so please go there and feel free. And if you do fall asleep, you can thank me for that too. But that's what we'll do, and I think we can get to much greater growth rate then, and if we do, that's going to create jobs in this country. Anything else over the course of our history has never done it. Government doesn't create jobs. The jobs that government creates are temporary, and they cost us more than they contribute to the society. And we don't need to do that anymore. We got to stop doing it.
Relate to inheritance taxes?
Well, listen, you know, inheritance taxes and estate taxes, I mean, listen, you know, fact is that I think if you've paid taxes 3 or 4 times already, you shouldn't have to continue to pay taxes, right? So you pay the taxes when you earn it. Then if you invest it, you pay taxes on your investment. And then when you spend it, in most states, you pay sales taxes on what you spend. And then when you die, you got to pay taxes again? It doesn't seem to make sense to me. And so I am not a fan of the estate inheritance taxes because the money's been taxed 2 or 3 times at least, not counting property taxes that you pay with that same money. So I'm not a fan of that, and I think what it does is it penalizes success in this country. And I don't think we want to penalize success. And what they forget is they think it's all people like Donald Trump. It's not. In places like Iowa, it's people who own their farms and want to pass them from one generation to the next. In my state, it's people who own small businesses. Our property values are so high in New Jersey that if you own your house and you've spent 30 years and you pay off your mortgage and you have a small business combined with it, you're going to get crushed. That's not wealthy. That's regular folks who have built a business and want to pass it on to the next generation and their family, and they get penalized for that. The government wants to create the boogeyman all the time that it's only like the multi-billionaire. It's not just the multi-billionaire. The people who really get hurt, the multi-billionaire doesn't get hurt by that. They pay a small fraction of what they have and they move on. It's the everyday person who's worked to build something, whether it's a small business or a farm, and they're the ones who get hurt. And so, yeah, I'm not a fan of estate inheritance taxes at all because I think those that money has been taxed a number of times already. We don't need to tax it a last time on the way out the door, so to speak. Yes, sir.
Weeks ago, you gave an incredible talk in the town hall about addiction, and of course, the personal example of a dear friend of yours from law school. And, I'm not sure who has heard that. If you care to retell that in some form, or
Sure, I'll try. Listen, first off, that was a town hall meeting that I did in New Hampshire where I just got asked a question about the heroin epidemic going on in this country and what I think we should do about it. And Huffington Post wound up by cutting that video and putting it up on their Facebook page and website, and over 8 million people viewed the talk. Listen, here's the thing. Like I said, I was a prosecutor for 7 years. I threw lots of people, violent folks, dealers, in jail for dealing drugs, for using violence to deal drugs and to enforce their territory, and there always should be a jail cell available for those type of people. They're poisoning our families, and they need to be penalized, they need to be separated from civilized people. But here's the problem. We're throwing a lot of addicts in jail too who do nothing else but fall victim to this disease. And it's a disease, everybody. It is a disease. And you know, the example I used in the talk that I gave was my mother. Now, my mom was addicted to smoking. She started smoking when she was 16 years old in 1948, before anybody really knew it was bad for you. And over the years, when she learned it was bad for her, she tried all kinds of ways to quit. I remember watching her. She tried the gum. Then when the patches came out, she tried the patches. She even at one point tried hypnosis, which did nothing for her smoking, but it mellowed her out a lot, which was good for us. So my mother was a bit of a high-strung lady, but it did nothing for the smoking, so she stopped the hypnosis. And then at 71 years old, almost inevitably, she was diagnosed with lung cancer. And when that happened, no one said to me, don't treat her, she's getting what she deserves. That she made a choice. She chose to smoke, and she knew it could cause lung cancer, and she did it anyway, so listen, she's getting what she deserves. No one says that. And nor was I ashamed to tell people that my mother had lung cancer. It wasn't a shameful thing. Yes, she had created it by her smoking, but I didn't feel ashamed of her. And I didn't think it reflected on me. She was addicted. It was a disease. She couldn't stop. I saw her try over and over again. And for whatever her genetic makeup was, she couldn't stop. Now, would we have felt the same way if my mother was a heroin addict? We would have said, well, you know, she made awful choices, and look at her, and she's a drug addict. And, well, I want to know what the difference is. Beside the fact that one's illegal and one's legal. What's the difference? The heroin addict today needs treatment. And treatment is the way for us to fix these problems. Not to fix every problem. Some people are bound to be defeated by this disease, either because they don't try hard enough or because their genetic makeup, like my mother's, just prevents any type of treatment from working. But this is destroying our families across this country. And Just Say No was a good idea, and the war on drugs was a good try, but it hasn't worked. We cannot jail our way out of this. 50% or more of the current people in federal prison are drug addicts. And we don't treat them, and then they come out of jail, and they commit crimes again to support their habit, and we're surprised. Why? They're sick and they need help. And you mentioned my friend from law school. I had a guy who I went to law school with who was in my study group. I'm a recovering lawyer, and that'll be funnier even later. But, you know, if you went to law school, if anybody here went to law school, you know the people that are in your study group first year are the people that you're closest to because they see you at your worst. Your first year of law school, you're scared to death. You don't know whether you're going to get it. You don't know whether you're going to make it. They're trying to scare you. And those people you study with every day are the people that are your support. This person was in my study group of 7 or 8 people that we had. And he was an incredibly annoying guy. He was the smartest of all of us. He wound up being one of the editors of the Law Review at our school. He was the first one to get a job. He was the first one to make partner. He married a beautiful woman who's a doctor. He had 3 beautiful daughters who were great athletes and really good looking as well. He had a beautiful home, made a great salary, and was also, annoyingly, a really good athlete. And as we got older, he continued to run 15, 20 miles a week. He was in great shape. During one of these runs, he hurt his back. Now, he wasn't giving in to age. He was in his early 40s, and he was still doing it as hard as he'd been doing it in his 20s, and he hurt his back. So he couldn't get his back right. He went to a chiropractor, a couple other places, couldn't get it right, went to a pain management doctor who gave him Percocet to deal with his back. And that started a long slide for him. And about a year after he had started taking this Percocet, his wife called me and said, listen, I kicked him out of the house. He's addicted to these painkillers, and now he's taking alcohol with them. I can't trust him with the kids. He's in trouble at work. He needs your help. And so a group of us, the guys in that study group, we did an intervention. He was living with his parents again. We went to his house and did an intervention. And over the next 10 years, we worked with him and struggled with him. And during those 10 years, his wife divorced him. He lost the right to see his girls. He lost his job. He lost his license to practice law. He lost his driver's license. He lost his home and his car. And he spent through all of his money, including his retirement money. And about a year and a half ago now, my wife and I got that call on an early Sunday morning that we were dreading but knew we were going to get. They found him in a cheap motel in New Jersey with an empty bottle of Percocet and an empty quart of vodka, dead at 52 years old. By every way we measure success in this country, this guy had it. Great education, great job, lots of money, great wife, great family, great house, great future. And all went away. It all went away because he couldn't deal with his disease. So we have to stop thinking about this as somehow the people who do this are uneducated, or they're lower socioeconomic class, or race matters, or religion matters, or any of that stuff matters, or quite frankly, how we are as parents. We try as hard as we can to make sure that this doesn't happen, that our kids don't make that first bad choice, but if they do we abandon them? See, because I'm pro-life. And I think that means you got to be pro-life for the whole life. It's easy to be pro-life for the 9 months they're in the womb. They haven't done anything to disappoint us yet. It's when they get out that things get complicated, really complicated. And if you're pro-life, I think you got to be pro-life for the whole life. And that means you got to be pro-life for the 16-year-old girl who's addicted to heroin laying on the floor of the county lockup. Her life is a gift from God also. Even in that state, her life is a gift from God. And my friend, in those 10 years we struggled with him, it's because we loved him and his life mattered to us that we continued to try to get him jobs and get him treatment and get him help. And the day I sat at his funeral, as the governor of New Jersey, across the aisle from his daughters, who now had lost their dad, I felt like a failure. We had worked hard and I felt like a failure because he was in that box and he was gone. Everything we can do to prevent that from happening, I think is something we should do. And I don't think we can do it just by throwing people in jail. If you're violent, if you're dealing, yeah, you go to jail. And you go to jail for a long time because you're poisoning our families. But if you're an addict, it's time we get you help. Because every life we save will help to rebuild a family. That family would be whole if treatment had worked for him. His wife loved him. She didn't want to divorce him. His daughters loved him. They didn't want to lose their dad. But we got to stop feeling ashamed of this. We got to start talking about it. The same way I was willing to say my mother has lung cancer, and we need to get her help, and ask for your prayers for her. I never hesitated to do that. I should have asked for my friend, but I didn't talk about it either, by the way. I didn't talk about my drug addict friend who needed prayers and needed help. Among our small circle, we did, but not broadly. We think differently about it. We got to stop that. And we need a president who will talk about it that way. Because if a president talks about it that way, it gives permission to the rest of the country to talk about it that way. That it's okay to talk again about this. And it's happening in families all over Iowa, all over New Jersey, all over this country. And we need to do better. We need to do much better. And as president, I will turn towards treatment and away from incarceration for those nonviolent folks. I want them to rebuild their lives because I believe their lives are precious, not only to society in general, but to their families in particular. And we need to save American families. The stronger we can make American families, the better this country will be. And drugs are tearing apart families in America every day. And we can't do it anymore the way we're doing it because it's a failure. So let's acknowledge failure and let's do something different. And that's the gist of what I've been saying about this. It's what I believe in my heart. And as president, it's exactly what I'll try to do for the country. So thanks for bringing it up. Yes, sir.
Your thoughts on how we deal with Mr. Putin?
Sure. Well, listen. First off, thank you, ma'am.
Welcome.
She's going to get a job as my assistant. It's going to be fabulous. First off, we've got to recognize what he is. This is a very smart, cunning thug. And so you got to understand that those two things can coexist. He's not dumb. He's clever, and he's a thug. But here's what's happening. We're allowing him to, for those of you who may be boxing fans in this room, we're allowing him to punch above weight. His economy is in decline. Energy prices are as low as they've been in a long time, which affects the Russian economy in a significant way. His military is in decline, yet we're allowing him to push us all over the place in Crimea, in Ukraine, now in Syria. President Putin just needs someone who's going to look him in the eye and tell him the limits of our patience. I'm not looking for a conflict with Russia. It's not in America's interest, but I am not going to allow Russia to push us around. We can't have that. So I think we need more communication with Putin, not less. And we need a president who's going to sit down with him and say, listen, I understand you have national interests that you have to represent. You're elected by the Russian people, kind of. And I understand that, but I want you to know that you've gone far enough in Eastern Europe and don't go a step further. Don't test us. And in Syria, if you want to work with us to defeat ISIS, prove it. But let's remember something about this guy. ISIS took down 214 people, civilians, in a Russian plane. Have we seen the retaliation yet from Russia against ISIS? No. What we see is Russia bombing Syrian rebels who are against Assad, their puppet in Syria. That's what he really cares about. So we also need to be clear-eyed about this. When other candidates say, well, if, Putin wants to bomb ISIS, I'm all for it. Let them do it. He doesn't want to bomb ISIS. He doesn't care. What he cares about is making sure he's got Assad in Syria so that he and the Iranians can use that as a base to further spread their influence across the Middle East. We need to tell him that we've had enough of that. And I don't think he's looking for conflict with us. But if we're going to let him steal our lunch money every day, he'll take it. And that's what he's doing to this president. How about he met with the president face to face, never told him what he was going to do in Syria, and then did it like a day or two later? That tells you how much respect he has for the president. Fact is, he needs to have a president again that he has a little bit of respect for and a little bit of fear of. That's a healthy thing. And I got asked in the debate about, a no-fly zone in Syria. And what if Russian planes flew into the no-fly zone? What would you do? And I said, well, I would have warned Mr. Putin not to fly in the no-fly zone. They said, well, what if he did it anyway? And I said, I'd shoot it down. You'd shoot it down. I said, well, what the hell does a no-fly zone mean? It means no fly. If you fly, we shoot you down. And if you warn everybody and you give them ample warning and you're fair about it, and then you don't shoot them down, then don't call it a no-fly zone. Call it a sometimes fly zone. Depending upon who you are and what time of day it is. And this is the problem. The problem with America right now is we're not clear. We're not unequivocal. And we need to be in our leadership, and that's the way I would deal with Putin. We need to put him back in his cage. And that's going to mean pushing a bit. But we have to do that. And we have to do it face to face, eye to eye. We have to make sure he takes the measure of the person across from him. He's taken the measure of Barack Obama, and we see what he's done. He needs to take the measure of the new guy. And here's the thing. If it's me, all of you have known me for a long time. I've been coming to Iowa since the fall of 2010 for Governor Branstad. And I've been here many times for members of your legislature, for members of your congressional delegation, for Governor Branstad again. And there's lots of things that have been said about me, and you all have read a lot and heard a lot about me over the last 6 or 7 years. Here's one thing that's never been said about me, that I'm misunderstood. Okay? I will not be misunderstood. Vladimir Putin will not wonder when he walks away from meeting me, I wonder what he's thinking. And I wonder if he's serious. You know, and you have folks like Senator Paul standing next to me at the debate going crazy. Oh, he's going to start World War III. Senator, yeah, this news may have gotten to Washington yet. World War III has started. It has started. It's different. And it's an Islamic jihadist terrorist war that has been going on since before 9/11. And we better get with the idea that all these parts are interconnected. And if we let Putin run wild, he helps the Iranians. The Iranians help Hezbollah and Hamas and other terrorist groups. It's all connected, everybody. And we need to, when you start pushing back on one, it hurts the other too. So that's the way I would deal with Putin. I'm not looking for conflict, but I will not allow the American people and American interests around the world to be trampled on. Because if you do that, they just keep going. You know, you give them your belt, they want your shirt. You give them your shirt, they want your pants. It never ends, everybody, until you say, stop. I'm not giving you any more. And I'm not letting you do anything else. And that's, I think, the way we need to deal with President Putin. Yes, sir. Back right there.
In a similar vein, how would you deal with the aggressive China, particularly in the South China Sea?
Well, I'd said a number of weeks back, when the president was not sailing ships near those islands that they're building or flying over them because he didn't want to provoke China, I said, if he doesn't do it, when I become president, I'll fly Air Force One over them so that they understand that we mean business. Fact is, the relationship with China is going to be the most important relationship we have in this century. We're going to be the two most powerful countries in the world, and we have to have a relationship with them. Now, it's going to be up to the Chinese what kind of relationship we have. So, for instance, in the South China Sea, we need to rebuild our Navy. We're down to the smallest Navy we've had since World War I under this president. We need to, and the Chinese know that, so they're building up their naval capacity in the South China Sea because they know right now we're stretched too thin and we can't compete. So they need to see us rebuilding our Navy and then positioning some of that Navy in the South China Sea so they understand that we mean business to protect the South Koreans, the Japanese, the Taiwanese, our folks who are allies in that region who want to make sure that those shipping lanes are open and available to everyone to move people and commerce through that area. Second, cyber warfare. I'm a victim of Chinese cyber warfare. They attacked the Office of Personnel Management in the federal government. It's the place where they keep all of the records of all the background checks and clearances for all the people who have served in sensitive positions in the federal government. And they got over 4 million records. So the Chinese today have my social security number and my fingerprints, a thing that I'm not entirely comfortable with, to tell you the truth. And what has the president done in response to that cyber attack? Nothing. Nothing. I said at the debate a couple weeks ago, if they want to act in a way that's hostile to us, we have to act hostile back. So if they want to commit cyber warfare against us, there's no one who knows how to commit cyber warfare better than the United States. Our technology and our know-how is still better than anyone in the world. So I got asked, what would I do? I'd say, listen, I'd say to our guys and women, find the secrets that they are most sensitive about, that they're hiding from their people, because they hide a lot more from their people than our government hides from us. Get some of those and start publishing them in the newspaper. Let their people know some of the money they're stealing, some of the things they're doing as a corrupt government. I guarantee I'd get a call from the president of China then. I'm sure he'd be like, hey, what are you doing here? I'd say, well, listen, you want to play that game with us, we'll play that game with you. You want to stop? I'm happy to stop. But they need to understand that there are costs to aggressive behavior. And I think the Chinese depend so much upon us for their economy as well, that they don't want to have a bad relationship with us. And they know militarily they can't deal with us. Even in our weakened state at the moment, after 7 years of this president, they still can't deal with us. So they know that. They don't want to fight. So let's keep ourselves strong so that that position stays. And let's be clear and concise and direct with them. And when they do things that are outside the lines, hit them back. The Chinese understand strength. They respect strength. And, all you need to do is look at this climate agreement from Paris. Chinese know how to negotiate against somebody who doesn't know how to negotiate either. The climate agreement in Paris says all these things have to start immediately for us. But for China, they can continue to pollute at the same rate or greater than they're doing right now till 2030. Only Barack Obama could negotiate, and John Kerry could negotiate a deal like that, right? I mean, seriously, can you imagine if, today, Barack Obama came back from Hawaii and John Kerry, from wherever the heck he is, and landed here in Muscatine and came over and said to you, listen, I'm going to go over and negotiate. I know you want to buy a new car. I'm going to over and negotiate it for you. You only imagine what would happen to you? Walk in that car dealership, the first thing these two guys would say is, hey, listen, here's my friend. He's not leaving this showroom without a car today. So let's negotiate price. You'd leave with a car, all right, empty pockets, but a car nonetheless, right? This is the way these guys negotiate. The Chinese don't respect that. They respect people who know how to negotiate and who are willing to stand up. And I think that's what we need to do. It's a recurring theme around the world. The president thought that America would be loved if he gave some nice speeches and left everybody alone. That's not the way the world works. And we need to get the world back working the way it always has. Yes, sir. Thank you.
My concern is that our military strength is spread so thin right now that compared to Russia, my concern is we say stop and they say, or what? You say that China still understands strength and that we're stronger than they are. Maybe that's right, but Russia is much stronger militarily than we are, and we can't win the wars we're in now.
Well, I would argue with you whether they're actually stronger than us or not, but I understand what you're saying about us being spread thin. So I have a few answers to that. The first one is we got to set our priorities. And yeah, that means you have to have a strategic vision. You can't just react. The thing that I dislike the most about the Obama foreign policy is it's reactive. So every time something happens, he reacts, rather than making things happen. Having a strategy where you make things happen. I had a woman who I saw in Florida back, it's now well over a year ago, older woman who grabbed me on a rope line, and she said to me, one of the things that's been one of the most insightful things I've had anybody say to me in the course of this entire adventure. She said, Governor, what's happened to our country? We used to control events. Now we let events control us. And that's part of the first thing we need to do, is to make sure that we have a strategic vision. Second, we have to rebuild the military. When you have the smallest Navy you've had since World War I, and we have the smallest active duty Army we've had since 1940, everybody knows those numbers. They're not a secret. We're an open society. Everybody knows what the levels are. We have to invest more in our military. And we have to invest more to make sure that folks understand around the world that we'll use the capability, and they also have to know that we're willing to invest in that as a sign of our own resolve. I think the Russians, quite frankly, are a bit of a paper tiger at the moment. Their technology is behind where ours is, and their investment over time is behind where ours is. Now, if we continue to go in the direction we're going, they'll catch us. But we still have, I think, enough of a lead that if we get the next president to really invest in what we need to do and set strategic priorities, that we're going to be okay. But we don't have a whole lot of time to waste. The president's wasted the last 7 years in this regard. And let's face it, he's made a decision that he wanted to make. He wanted to de-emphasize the military. This is not happened by accident. He made a conscious choice. And so I think it was the wrong choice. And I think most Americans think it's the wrong choice because they're seeing now the ramifications for those choices. Go ahead, you want to follow up?
I just want to know, are you aware of what the number is? I'm not. The difference between Russia and the United States and nuclear warheads, it seemed to me that I heard some time ago that they have a humongous lead on them, and they can send an ICBM to LA in like 17 minutes.
And we can send one to Moscow just as quick. I think the big concern about nuclear capability now on both the Russian side and the American side is modernization of that nuclear capability, making sure it's safe. You know, there's an enormous number we're going to have to pay on all three legs of the triad to keep it safe and operational. And what I'm more worried about with the Russian nuclear capability is two things. One, that they're not spending the money they need and there's going to be some kind of accident with their capability. And secondly, that it could fall into the wrong hands as their economy continues to go down. And that they may want to share some of that with some people who have more money, but not a nuclear capability. Right? So those to me are the greater concerns. I don't think there's any question that we could both annihilate each other dozens of times over with our nuclear capability that we have now. My greater concern is keeping that nuclear capability safe and operational on both sides, because if theirs becomes unsafe, there could be environmental disasters over there, which we saw with Chernobyl, and the lack of safety and investment in their nuclear capability on the civilian side that caused enormous environmental and humanitarian concerns. So that's my greater concern about that. It's not that they're outstripping us from a nuclear perspective. I don't believe that's true. But I do believe that both of us have aging nuclear facilities and capabilities that we're going to need to invest in to make sure they're safe, and from our perspective, to make sure they're operational. In the back, yes, sir, blue shirt.
Governor Christie, as a parent of 4 children, one of the concerns I have going forward is how important secondary education is and my abilities to afford that for my children. Because the cost of higher education seems to keep going up and up and up, and wages for middle America seem stagnant.
Yep.
What is your solution to this problem?
As the father of 4, with 2 of them in college right now, yeah, I have 2 of them in college right now, so I have exactly the same concern. Our oldest son is a senior at Princeton. Our oldest daughter is a sophomore at Notre Dame. And so the bill this year for the 2 of them combined is $122,500. Like, numbers that are, like, just incomprehensible to me, as I just wrote the second semester check, you know, to Notre Dame for $30,000. Second semester, right? So I understand the concern. I'm living the concern every day. And here's what I think we need to do. First of all, your comment on middle-class wages seem stagnant. It's because they are. And they've been stagnant for 15 years. In fact, from the time this president started till today, middle-class wages, adjusted for inflation, are down about $3,000. So people are going backwards in this administration. But the bigger problem we have is the debt that it foists upon our kids and us, and how do we control costs? So I have 4 ideas, 2 on the debt side, 2 on the cost side. On the debt side, it's absolutely unconscionable that kids are not allowed to refinance their student debt. By law, they're prevented from refinancing their student debt. So they could get lower rates at commercial banks, they're not allowed to do it. Well, that's just wrong. I mean, you know, we shouldn't be making money off our kids. And so I would allow them to refinance their debt if they were able to do it and get it at a lower rate. Good for them. Secondly, I think we should provide an option for national service for kids getting out of college beyond military service. National service to our country, which allows them over a period of 3 or 4 years to work off that debt. It'll help to make our communities and our country a better place. It'll give them a sense that there's something bigger than their own self-interest, and help to make our country a stronger, better place. And if they want to avail themselves of that option, that helps to lower some of that debt. I think that's a fair deal for us to have them contribute to our country in ways that we really need help in doing, and also get relief from that debt. I think that would be a good deal for the taxpayer. I think it would be a good deal for those young men and women. On the cost side is the bigger problem, right? I'll give you one example of Notre Dame. Now, this summer we got a letter from the president of Notre Dame, as parents, Father John Jenkins. Now, Father Jenkins is a Catholic priest of the Holy Cross, and his first paragraph went something like this. Dear parents, we want to thank you for the blessing you've bestowed upon us by entrusting the souls of your children to our care for the next number of years. Now, listen, for anybody who reads that letter, right, that first paragraph, when you're done, you close your eyes, you can hear the theme from Rudy playing in the background, right? You can see the Golden Dome and Touchdown Jesus, right? Your heart's pounding. And are there any Catholics here? Raise your hand if you're a Catholic. Okay, so after that paragraph, with your experience as a Catholic, what's the next paragraph? It's the money paragraph, right? Because this is what priests are extraordinarily good at, right? They get your heart going, and then they go in for the kill. So the next paragraph is, that's why we're pleased to tell you that tuition this year will only increase 3.9%. Now think about it. We're in a 1% inflation world. Tuition is going up 3.9%, which he then says later in the letter, is the lowest annual increase in 40 years. Nearly 4%, the lowest increase in 40 years. And total student cost this year will be $62,500. You know, here's the thing. Most other decisions we make in our life, we make it based on value in terms of the way we spend our money. Do we think that what we're buying and the price that we're being charged represents a fair exchange? It's not the way it works for colleges, right? Because imagine if Mary Pat and I called Sarah downstairs after we got that letter and said, you know what, honey, we know you love Notre Dame, and you had a great freshman year there, and you're really enjoying it. But you know what, we got the bill, and it just doesn't represent value for us economically anymore, so we're going to send you to a less expensive school in wherever, fill in the blank. Any of you in this room with a 19-year-old daughter, currently or in your past, how do you think that conversation goes? After the crying and the stamping of the feet and running upstairs and slamming the door, you're ruining my life. I can't believe you're doing this to me. You know what we're going to do. Mary Pat and I are going to sit around that kitchen table and figure out a way, any way we can, to make it work. Because we want her to get a good education, we want her to be happy. Here's the problem. The colleges know that too. They know they've got us. They've got us because we're not making a rational decision most of the time. We're making an emotional decision. We want our children to be happy. We want our children to be as educated. And not only want them to be educated, we want them to be educated where they want to be educated, where they're going to be happy and enjoy them. And if there's any way we can figure out to do it, we're going to do it. So here's what we need to do. Two things. First, if you came here this morning and you had breakfast, there's four of you, and they gave you the check, and you flipped the check over and it said food, $50. You'd call the waiter or waitress over and say, excuse me, could you detail on here exactly what I'm paying for and like how much each one of it costs? But how about college? It's the most opaque bill in the world. It's 3 lines, right? I'm just telling you, I just paid the Notre Dame bill before I left to come out here. So it is vividly in my mind. Tuition, room and board, other fees. Like 30,000 something, right? We would not pay a diner bill if it gave us that lack of specificity. So first thing is, they need to detail for us what they're spending our money on. Because I'll tell you, everybody, if they do, we're going to have an eye-opening experience, and they're going to be embarrassed. And I had fun with this over at Iowa State. When I was over there giving a speech, I asked them if they had rock climbing walls at Iowa State. The students are like, yeah, we got rock climbing walls. I'm like, all right, well, it's Iowa. You know, it's farmland here. Maybe rock climbing walls is okay. Then I went to New Hampshire. In the University of New Hampshire, and I said, do you have rock climbing walls at the University of New Hampshire? They said, yes. I'm like, you're the granite state. You have rocks everywhere. I've driven around New Hampshire a lot now, everybody. They have as many rocks as you have corn, okay? There are rocks everywhere in New Hampshire. Go outside and climb those rocks. What are we building rock climbing walls for? Now, of course, I got criticized for this. You know, one media outlet said, Christie's assault on college fitness. Listen, look at me. Okay? I've assaulted fitness in many ways. This was not one of them, all right? This is not an assault on fitness. This is common sense. So one, we should require them to detail out how they're spending it. Maybe we don't need another 44 vice presidents for paperwork. Maybe we don't need another 3 buildings that are monuments to somebody who used to go there, but we don't really need them. And maybe we don't need the rock climbing wall. Second thing we need to do is we need to allow you to break out your bill and to be able to unbundle it and choose the things that you want to pay for, the things that your child's going to use. The reason that's important is that's the only thing that will put a market force on this price, because we won't in terms of going or staying. But we can put a market force on this bill by only picking to pay for the things that we want to use. So if 98% of the people didn't do the rock climbing wall, then we have no more rock climbing walls, everybody. They wouldn't have the money to do it. So how do we do this? Force them to do that? We say, if you're unwilling to do that, you cannot participate in the student loan or student grant programs. If we prohibit them from accessing federal taxpayer money, believe me, they'll get religion really quick. Really quick. And that's the only way we're going to force them to do it. So that's what I would do. And hopefully that'll help to contain the costs, and on the payment side, give folks some options of lower interest rates and another option to pay off that debt, because otherwise it's going to choke us, and it is choking families right now. Yes, sir.
On the national debt, I've asked several candidates on both sides of the aisle this same question I'm about to ask you.
Hopefully I'll do.
I've never gotten an answer.
Hopefully I'll do better. He doesn't look happy.
I hope you do.
All right, we're going to try.
All you get's a runaround on it.
Yep.
I mean, we're 19 trillion in debt. It's going up $1 million a minute. We just signed a budget of 1.2 trillion. The largest, you talk a lot about bringing up military spending, but the largest portion of that is military spending.
Yep.
And if we want to get that, we got to get that clock turned around at some point, because I think it is our biggest national security concern.
Yep.
And how do you do that with, you got to keep the military up, I agree with that. How do you do that, get them budgets, not 1.2 trillion, going to a lot of things they don't need to, and get that debt turned around and coming down instead of up?
All right. Here's where the website will actually help you to understand exactly what I want to do. I am the only person in this race still. Now, we're at the end of December of 15. We've been at this for a year almost now. I'm the only person in this race who's put together and put forward a detailed entitlement reform program. Here's the thing. It feels like the military is the biggest part of that. Here's the actual statistics. Of federal spending this year, all federal spending, 71% of all federal spending is on entitlements and debt service. 71%. So why am I going after trying to change entitlements? It's like what Willie Sutton said when they asked him why he robs banks. It's because that's where the money is. We're spending enormous amounts on entitlements, and they're going broke on top of it with the dedicated taxes they have. So we put forward a plan on entitlement reforms that'll save over $1 trillion over the next 10 years. And that's real money. And the fact is, what we need to do is this. I won't give you all 12 points, thank God. You can go for the other 8 on the website, but I'll give you 4 of them, and then I'll talk about the other things we need to do on debt. Social Security. We have to raise the retirement age of Social Security. And here's why. We're living longer. And that's a blessing, everybody. Shouldn't be upset about it. We should be happy about it, right? I mean, the average life expectancy now for a woman in America is 83 years old. The average life expectancy for a man in New Jersey, in the country, New Jersey is probably less, but in the country is 79. Now, I see a couple ladies smiling. Now, listen. 10 years ago, you were 6 years ahead of us. 10 years later, you're 4 years ahead of us. We are gaining on you. And now that 4-year vacation you were hoping for at the end of your life from us, you may not get it. We may be hanging with you the entire trip, okay? So no need for premature smiling about this. But the point is, these programs like Social Security were created when people's life expectancy was in the mid-60s. We're now living 15 to 20 years longer than what these programs were designed to maintain. So we got to raise the retirement age. So I say we raise it 2 years, and we phase it in over 25 years. So that means eligibility to go up a month a year every year for 25 years. So for people who are on Social Security now, it doesn't affect them at all. For people who are close to Social Security, it may affect them a couple of months. But for my children, it will affect them in a big way, and it should. Because by the time they get to be our age, life expectancy will be even longer given the advances we're making in medical technology and in pharmaceuticals. So let's acknowledge that, and that will help a lot, the actuarial balance in that program. Secondly, we need to means test Social Security. Fact is, My plan says if you're making over $200,000 a year in retirement income, means you've stopped working and outside your residence, you have investments that are throwing off $200,000 a year in income. That means you have at least $4 to $5 million saved. First thing I say to you is God bless you. Good work. You raised a family, got to retirement age, you got $4 or $5 million in the bank. Great work. Second thing I say is God bless America, because this is the only country you could have done it in. But I want to ask you, does your Social Security check really matter to you at that point? Is it going to change your lifestyle markedly to get that $1,200 or $1,500 a month check for Social Security? I say no. And here's the only question now. We have more money going out than we have money coming in. So you got to do one of two things, either increase the money coming in or reduce the money going out. What do you trust the government to do more? Hillary Clinton's going to say, take the cap off Social Security tax and let everybody pay payroll tax on every nickel they make. She said, that'll get at the rich people. I want to get at the people who have been successful by not giving them benefits at the back end, and here's why. The reason we're in this trouble is because they stole the money in the first place. This money is supposed to be in a trust fund, right? All the money we pay in payroll tax is supposed to be in a trust fund, or like Al Gore used to call it, the lockbox, right? It's supposed to be in there. Guess what's in the lockbox? A stack of IOUs. Because we're spending that money now on all those other things that you talked about, and we're giving IOUs to Social Security. And in that $1.2 trillion budget deal, you know what they did? They stole $150 billion from the Social Security retirement area and put it into Social Security disability because it was going bankrupt. So why would you give more money to the people who lie to you and stole from you on the promise that this time they won't? Well, I swear this time we'll definitely keep that money in the lockbox. You know and I know, no chance. If a politician has the ability to spend money on something else and they don't have to raise your taxes or cut another program, but they just have to steal from that pile of money over here that nobody really knows about or understands, that's what they're going to do. So let's not give them more. It's like if a guy opened a local community bank here and the bank went belly up and you lost money. And then 3 years, 4 years later, the same guy comes to your front door and says, by the way, remember me? I own the old bank down the street. I'm opening up a new bank. Can you deposit your money with me? And say, hey, wait a second. Your bank went belly up the last time and I lost money. Why would I give you my money again? He goes, oh no, this time I'm going to be different. I learned. There's no chance you'd give him the money. You would close the door and say, thank you very much, because you're from Iowa, so you'd be nice. Right? You'd say, it's very nice of you to come by. Thank you very much. He would not leave that front porch with any of your money. Why would you treat the government any differently? And we do the same thing on Medicare, by the way. Raise the eligibility age 2 years, phase it in over 25. And for people who have that over $200,000 a year in retirement income, instead of subsidizing your Medicare premiums 75%, which is what we do now, we'll subsidize your Medicare premiums 10%. Because you can afford to pay more for Medicare if you're making $200,000 or more a year in retirement income. Those steps and some others that are listed on there have been scored by the Congressional Budget Office. They save over $1 trillion. We need to get at that to make those programs solvent and to save money from what we're putting in debt. Second thing we need to do is we need to cut programs in the federal government. I did this in New Jersey. When I came into the governorship, we had an $11 billion deficit on a $29 billion budget. And we have a constitutional requirement to balance the budget every year, so we can't run a deficit like the federal government does. We cut 800 programs in New Jersey. I sat down and went line by line through the budget and cut 800 programs. And let me tell you something, it wasn't any fun, because every one of those programs has a constituency. You get lots of people who say, like you said, listen, we got to get this done under control. And then I'd say, well, I'm going to cut this program. And you'd go, well, hold on now, Governor. That program is a very good program. And I like it, and I use it, and it's very good. Cut some of those other programs. So when I cut 800 programs, I got emails and letters and phone calls and protests from everybody, because I was goring everybody's ox. But that's what you need to do. Third thing is, it gets back to economic growth again. The only way that we're going to get more money into the government in order to try to balance this out, and the only way you're going to deal with $19 trillion in debt, you can't cut your way out of it. It's too big. I mean, anybody who comes here and tells you we're going to cut fraud, waste, and abuse, and we're going to balance that $19 trillion debt, throw them out of here. They're lying to you. There's not enough. You have to grow the economy and get more revenue into the government to help to balance off that debt, and have the discipline of a president who won't just every dollar that comes in, like it's burning a hole in their pocket, spending it. But that's the only way to do it. Deal with entitlements, which is 71% of the spending along with debt service, and you don't add to the debt. Debt service won't continue to go up. But let's remember something. Right now, interest rates are historic lows. What happens when those interest rates go up and we're having to pay more on our debt service? It's going to get worse. Second, cut the programs that need to be cut. Third, grow the economy so that you have more money coming into the government to help to balance this off. Because you got to push it. It's like an accordion. You're going to have to push it from both ends to get it flat. You're not going to be able to just push from one end. It won't work just pushing it from one end. And anybody who tells you they're going to cut their way to solve this problem is just not telling you the truth. It's not going to happen. You could do that in an $11 billion deficit with a $29 billion budget, not with $19 trillion in debt. Not going to happen. So I don't know if that question is any more satisfying or any less evasive. I feel like it is. Did better. Hey, goodbye, everybody. We'll see you. We're going to leave now. You know, if I did better on that question, I'm getting the hell out of here. All right, my staff's telling me that I got to let you go, but I can take one more question, which means I will take two, because I want them to remember that I'm still the boss. So, yes, sir.
On about page 14 of a prospectus that I got, said that when Democrats are in the White House, there is a 8.5% better return on your 401k since the beginning of the stock market than there is when Republicans are in there. How are you going to change that? Because everybody's got 401k in
Yeah,
there.
me too.
Yeah.
Yeah, I listen.
How are you going to change that?
Well, you know, I hope by making the economy grow more, which will make the stock market grow more. But here's the thing. You know, the stock market's growing at has been growing at great rates in the last number of years, right? And that helps. Everybody's got a 401k. I'm not, believe me, hang with me here for a second now. I know Obama's a Democrat. I definitely know that, right? But if you talk to everyday folks outside the 401k, and like the gentleman mentioned back there about stagnant middle-class wages, you know, imagine what our economy will do and the stock market will do if we get the middle class growing in this country again. And we can't just worry about the investor class, because just worrying about the investor class leaves a lot of people behind. And so I'm going to take your word for it on that statistic, and if the prospectus is right, and if that turns out to be right, there are cycles that happen in the stock market all the time. I don't know how dependent that is, the stock market in particular, on who the president is or isn't. But since the president's going to get blamed for everything, he should get credit for whatever happens on their watch too. But the fact is that the only way this is going to work long term for the American economy is to grow the middle class wages again and make people believe and experience the idea that if they work harder and better, that they're going to make more, and that their families are going to do better. And that's going to have more for that 401k then. And then when it grows, it'll grow even more because they're working off a higher principle than it was before. But as to speaking to the statistic in specific, I have no idea how to answer that question except to say that every president's got to be judged on his or her own merits. And you give me an opportunity, you'll judge me up or down on those merits, and I'm sure I'll hear you, because America's not quiet at the moment. And I certainly wouldn't be a quiet president. So that's the way I would deal with it. I can take one more. Yes, sir. Oh, you. Oh, you. Yes. Sorry.
It takes an awful lot for me to wake up at 3 o'clock in the morning in Springfield, Illinois, and drive up here.
Yeah, it does.
What happened was last night listening to Donald Trump, and you're a pretty modest guy, and I think a lot of times you undersell yourself.
Well, compared to him, probably yes. But that's a low bar, you know.
You made yourself New Jersey strong because of your ability after 9/11 to weave the righteous Muslim intention into the American fabric to help protect us all. And that's part of the job of defending us as a people. Of course, we have to defend ourselves militarily. And why I endorse you as the single most qualified candidate to be President of the United States.
I'm glad you drove here.
Is that you can quilt the 50 states using the New Jersey strong fabric pattern into making us American strong.
Well, listen, here's what I'll say. The challenge after September 11th, if you were the U.S. Attorney in New Jersey, with the second largest Muslim American population in the country other than Michigan, was how do you reestablish those relationships with the hardworking, peace-loving, good Muslim Americans in our state? How do you do it? And the way I did it was just by going mosque to mosque in my state and meeting with the leaders of those communities and saying to them, listen, we want to have a relationship with you. And I don't believe that every Muslim American is a terrorist, because you're not. And, you know, you need to have those conversations. And we need to have those conversations now as a country, because we know in our hearts that every Muslim American in this country is not a terrorist. We know that. I can tell you I know it because I live amongst these folks every day. And part of what helped us when I was U.S. Attorney was developing those relationships. And those folks gave us intelligence on bad things that were going on inside their mosques. You know why? Because they're Americans too, and they don't want terrorist attacks on their country. And so I think we need to have a much more adult conversation about this than what we're having. Fact is that anybody who uses their religion towards violent means or uses their religion to try to impose their religion on you is a problem. I want a country where everyone gets to practice their religion as they see fit. As long as they do it peacefully and they don't try to impose their religion on me, have at it. The problem with some of the folks in the radical Islamic jihadist movement is they want all of us to be them. They want to impose their beliefs, their culture on us. We cannot permit that. That's anti-American. What American is for all of us to be able to practice our religion in the way that we see fit. The First Amendment to the Constitution speaks of not an establishment of religion and of freedom of religion. The founders didn't make it the First Amendment by mistake. They didn't pick it out of a hat. This country was founded on that idea. But by the same token, for people who are acting peacefully and productively in this country, we cannot paint everybody with the same broad brush. And I think all of us as Americans know that in our hearts. We know that, right? So what I'd say to you is the difference between me and other candidates on this issue is experience. I know that because I've lived it. I've lived what it means to live in a state that has the second most Muslim Americans in the country, and to try, both as U.S. Attorney and then as governor, to bring that state together. And it's not easy. But you don't do it by painting everybody with the same brush. It shouldn't be done by the color of your skin. It shouldn't be done by the religion you practice. It shouldn't be done by what neighborhood you live in or what job you have. As Dr. King said, it should be based on the content of your character. And I think all of us would be more than happy to be judged by the content of our character. That's who we are, what we believe and what we live in here, and not by the way we look or what place of worship we go to or what job we go to every day. And so, you know, some of these things sound good because they're easy. You make big, broad, bold statements, and then no one asks you the second question because you don't stay long enough. No one asks you how. This election is about how. We all know what we need to do. The question is how. How do we do it? How do we do it in a way that respects our traditions? How do we do it in a way that moves our country forward? How do we do it in a way that gives everybody the feeling that they have a chance to succeed in this country? That's what we were built on. That what you're judged by, winners and losers, are determined in America by the greatness of your ideas and the depth of your work ethic. If you have great ideas and you have good character, that good character is displayed by working hard, you can succeed in this country, no matter who you are, no matter where you come from, no matter who your parents were, no matter who your grandparents were. And that's the kind of country, the only kind of country where I could be standing here this morning as a candidate for president. My great-grandfather and great-grandmother came to this country on a boat from Sicily. My great-grandfather was a Mason. And my great-grandmother, when their ticket got called in Sicily to come to America, was 9 months pregnant. And she had a decision to make. Did she get on that boat then or wait for the next turn? She and my great-grandfather got on that boat. And she gave birth to my grandfather on that boat. I got to tell you, I'm sure it was not luxury accommodations. My great-grandfather had $7 in his pocket when he came here. So imagine what went through her mind, that she wanted to come to America so much that she was willing to give birth on a boat between Sicily and New York. You know, this is the only country in the world where somebody who is 2 generations removed from that experience could run for president of the United States. We want everybody to believe that if they care about that, that they have the opportunity to do that, that that's what this country is all about. So I think what you're talking about is how do we speak about these things in a way that acknowledges the dangerous, dark world that we live in, protects us, but doesn't give away the store in the process. And we can do that. I've done it. We can do it. And there's no reason for us to give in to the darker side of our angels here. There's no reason for us to have to do that. We can do both. We can definitely do both. You just need someone who knows how to do it and who's willing to take the steps that need to be taken to do it. I'll just end with this. You all have an awesome responsibility in 34 days. This is the largest Republican field we've seen in my lifetime. Even with 4 people having dropped out, we're still at 13. Right? You're seeing more of us and more mail and commercials and all the rest of it than you probably can stand at this point, and you got 34 days left. But here's the thing. Iowa and New Hampshire have the biggest responsibilities they've ever had in this process. Because after Iowa and New Hampshire, there'll probably only be 4 or 5 of us left. You're going to decide for the other 48 states, from 13 to 4 or 5. Choose well. Don't listen to the pundits or the polls or the prognosticators. You get the chance to do this. No other states other than you and New Hampshire and maybe South Carolina a bit get to do this. Once March 1st comes, it's multiple states a week, and everybody's running around just touching down in different states and doing the best they can. You all, for months, and I don't need to tell you, for months and months and months, have been getting to do this. You get an opportunity to judge us up close. Choose based on who you believe will be the best nominee for our party and the best president for our country. Don't let anybody else talk you into it. You don't have to rely upon anybody else. You can do it. I'm here. A few hours from now, Rubio's going to be around. Go see him, right? Go see Cruz. Go see Trump. Go see all of them. I'm not one of those guys who says, listen, just see me and don't worry about anything else and I'll be fine. I'm happy to be compared to all of them. I'm happy for you to go and see as many of these candidates as you want and then sit down and decide for yourself who you believe is the best person to beat Hillary Clinton and who you believe is the best person to run this country. Because remember something, there's no silver medals in this business, everybody. You lose, you go home. And you know, nothing to hang on the wall afterwards. This is about, as Republicans, we need to beat Hillary Clinton. So I'll leave you with this. We're going to have another debate in 2 weeks on January 14th in South Carolina. And I hope many of you, if not all of you, will watch it. And I don't know how many of us will be on the stage. We'll see. You know, they keep moving the numbers around. We'll see. I'll be there. I'll be on the stage with a bunch of other folks. When that debate starts, I want you to look at the folks on that stage. And I want you to ask yourself this question. Who's the most tested? Who's the most ready? Who's the most mature to be the next president of the United States? That's what you need to ask yourself, in my opinion. And I'll live with whatever answer you give. But I want Iowa to really be engaged. Because we're not picking the entertainer-in-chief, everybody. And this campaign's been fun. Believe me, I've enjoyed it. It's entertaining. We got governors, we got former governors, we got senators, we got former senators, we got business people, we got a character. We got everything, right? And you all have been entertained, I am sure. There have been moments where you have just sat in front of your TV and just let out a good, hearty laugh and been entertained. That's great. I'm happy that you've been entertained. But Showtime is over, everybody. It's game time. And there's a big difference between showtime and game time. Big difference. Showtime is the time when you sit back and enjoy and you watch. It's non-participating. Just sit back and be entertained. Game time is when you strap on the helmet and you go in and you're part of the game. You all are the most important part of this game. Iowa and New Hampshire are the most important parts of this game. So it is game time now. So you got 34 days. Still plenty of time. Make up your mind. I will tell you, I want your vote. I want your vote. I'm not here just to get a Fox News show or a book deal or something else. I want to be president. I'm not looking for those other things. So I'm not going to leave without asking you for your vote. I want you to caucus for me. I need you to do that. And I hope you'll consider doing it. There's nothing more important than who's going to be the next president of the United States. Nothing more important to the future of this country than who's going to take over this mess and try to right it. And I would think you'd want somebody who was tough enough and direct enough to be able to do the job that needs to be done. So I appreciate you coming this morning. Appreciate you braving the weather, although for Iowans, this ain't so bad, I suspect. And I appreciate you doing that, though. I appreciate you taking the time. I will be back around here again, I am sure, between now and the next 34 days. Look forward to seeing you all again. I appreciate you taking the time, your consideration, and I appreciate you participating in the process. Anyone who's cynical about American democracy, come to Muscatine this morning and see all of you sitting in this room giving me a chance to be heard. You can't be cynical about American democracy. We're going to be just fine. We need a strong leader who will help to take us there because we already have a strong country. So thank you all for coming. I appreciate it.